This old hag doesn't know her place, so don't blame me for not being polite.
Cade Jennings' voice boomed across Rosewood Diner like thunder before a storm. The sound of his palm connecting with 78-year-old Elara Wilson's cheek cracked through the air like a whip, sending the elderly woman stumbling backward onto the worn wooden floor. 30 customers froze mid-bite, forks suspended between plates and mouths. Coffee cups hovered in mid-air. The entire diner became a tableau of shock, as if someone had pressed pause on reality itself. Chloe Vance, the 22-year-old server with trembling hands, fumbled for her phone, managing to hit record just as Elara's knees hit the floor. Through the large window, Liam Webb, who'd been filming a food blog about Montana's hidden culinary gems, swung his professional camera toward the violence unfolding inside. "Your land is blocking my business!" Cade towered over Elara, his contractor's boots inches from her face, sawdust still clinging to his jeans. His finger jabbed downward like a dagger. "Sterling Croft is offering 3 times market value, and you still refuse. Who do you think you are?" The bell above the door chimed softly, almost apologetically. A small woman in a server's uniform stepped inside, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun that suggested she'd been running, glasses slightly askew on her nose. Beside her, a German shepherd, wearing a service dog vest, moved with military precision, every muscle coiled and ready. "Mom?" Owena Wilson dropped to her knees beside Elara, her voice cracking with what seemed like genuine panic. "I'm here, Mom." "Are you okay?" Cade's laugh was ugly, filling the space like toxic smoke. "Look at this. The daughter's as pathetic as the mother. One good breeze would knock both of you over." Owena looked up, tears glistening in her blue eyes, but something else flickered there for just a fraction of a second. Something cold, something calculating. She whispered a single word, so quiet it barely disturbed the air. "Watch." Shadow, the German shepherd, moved instantly. Not the excited bounce of a pet, or the curious sniff of a regular dog. This was something else entirely. The animal positioned itself between Cade and the two women with geometric precision. Tail rigid, ears forward, creating a living barrier that somehow made the massive contractor take an involuntary step backward. Sheriff Kent pushed through the door exactly 90 seconds after the assault, his timing so perfect it couldn't be coincidence. His uniform was pressed to military specifications, but his eyes avoided the scene on the floor, focusing instead on straightening his already straight badge. Now, let's all calm down here," Kent said, his voice carrying the false authority of someone who'd already chosen a side. "Looks like we've had a little misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Old Man O'Brien spoke up from table 7, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the formica. "That man just struck an elderly woman." Kent's smile was practiced, political. "I'm sure Mr. Jennings was just making his point a bit too enthusiastically. These property disputes can get heated." Owena helped her mother to a sitting position, her movements careful, controlled. Her hands shook visibly, but Shadow hadn't moved a millimeter from his position. The dog's breathing was steady, measured, 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out. Combat breathing, though none of the onlookers would recognize it. "Please," Owena's voice quavered, "we don't want any trouble. We just want to go home." "Home?" Cade stepped closer, and Shadow's lips pulled back just enough to show the tips of his canines. "That lake house won't be your home much longer, sweetheart. One way or another, that land is becoming part of the Croft Development Project." Rodriguez, one of Cade's crew, had his phone out now, narrating for his social media followers. "Y'all seeing this? Local contractors putting entitled locals in their place? This is what happens when you stand in the way of progress." Thompson, another of Cade's men, circled to the left, his construction boots heavy on the diner floor. Wilson, the third member of the crew, moved right, classic flanking maneuver, though they probably thought they were just being intimidating. They'd boxed in the exits without seeming to, transforming the family diner into a cage. Elara's hand found Owena's arm. "The lake house," she whispered. "Your father built it with his own hands. They can't have it." "Shh, Mom." Owena's eyes never left Cade's face. "Everything's going to be fine." "Fine?" Cade's voice dripped with contempt. "Lady, you have no idea what fine looks like. You're about to learn what happens when you cross the wrong people in this town. Watching from Montana, Texas, maybe California? Drop your state in the comments. I'm curious where this story of hidden strength reaches across America. Every region has its own small-town bullies and quiet heroes. The crowd in the diner had grown denser. Customers who'd been preparing to leave now pressed against the walls, unwilling to miss what came next, but afraid to get too close. Chloe Vance kept her phone steady despite her trembling hands, understanding instinctively that documentation might be the only protection anyone had. O'Brien tried again. "Sheriff, you need to do something about this." "I am doing something," Kent replied smoothly. "I'm keeping the peace. And right now, the peaceful thing would be for Mrs. Wilson to reconsider Mr. Croft's generous offer." "It's not for sale," Ilara said quietly but firmly. Thompson laughed, the sound sharp and mean. "Everything's for sale, Grandma. It just depends on the price, or the pressure." Owena's stance shifted almost imperceptibly. Her weight redistributed, feet sliding into a position that would allow her to move in any direction instantly. Her breathing had changed, matching Shadow's rhythm exactly. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. The glasses and messy bun couldn't hide the way her eyes tracked everyone in the room simultaneously, cataloging threats, exits, potential weapons. "Your mom's being stubborn," Cade said to Owena, his voice taking on a false, reasonable tone. "Maybe you can talk some sense into her. Young people understand progress. That lake house is sitting on prime development land. We're talking about jobs, economic growth, and a future for this town." "The future," Ilara said softly, "doesn't require destroying the past." Cade's face darkened. "The past is exactly what's holding this town back. Old people clinging to old houses, old ideas." He leaned down, his face inches from Ilara's. "Old women who don't know when they're beat." Shadow growled, the sound so low it was more felt than heard, vibrating through the floorboards. Owena's hand moved to the dog's head, not to calm him, but to give a subtle signal. The growl stopped instantly, but the animal's posture remained coiled, ready. 17 minutes, Owena whispered, so quietly only her mother could hear. Rodriguez zoomed his phone camera on Owena's face. "Check out the daughter, trying to look tough with her guard dog. Bet she's never been in a real fight in her life." Thompson noticed something first. "Hey, look at how she's standing." "So?" Wilson scoffed, but he looked closer too. "I don't know, it's just—" Thompson trailed off, unable to articulate what his instincts were telling him. The woman looked terrified, sounded terrified, but her body was positioned like someone who'd spent years learning how to fight in close quarters. Cade grabbed Owena's wrist, intending to pull her away from her mother. His fingers closed around what he expected to be soft, delicate flesh. Instead, he felt cables of muscle, dense and powerful, the kind that came from carrying 100-pound packs through mountain terrain, from thousands of pull-ups on deployment bars, from rope climbs in full gear. His eyes widened slightly, but his ego wouldn't let him back down. "Not so fragile after all, are you?" "Please," Owena whimpered, though her arm didn't move despite his grip. "You're hurting me." But she wasn't pulling away, wasn't fighting. She was absorbing, enduring, waiting. Shadow's eyes never left Cade's throat. The diner's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made everyone look older, more tired, except Owena. In this light, despite the tears, despite the trembling, something else showed through, a hardness around the eyes, a set to the jaw. The kind of thing that comes from making life or death decisions and living with the consequences. "You know what your problem is?" Cade said to Ilara, still gripping Owena's wrist. "You think that land means something. You think your husband building that house 40 years ago gives you some kind of right to stand in the way of progress." 43 years, Ilara corrected quietly. 43 years ago, with wood from trees on our land, with stones from our creek. Every nail is hammered by hand. "Touching story," Cade sneered. "Won't matter much when the bulldozers come." Kent stepped forward, playing his part in what was clearly a rehearsed scene. "Now, nobody's talking about bulldozers. Mr. Croft is making a legitimate business offer. It would be wise to consider it." "Wise?" Owena repeated the word, tasting it. "Is that what you call it, when law enforcement helps private developers intimidate elderly citizens?" Kent's face flushed. "Watch your tone, miss. I could arrest you for interfering with a police matter." "What police matter?" O'Brien called out. "All I see is assault and battery being ignored." "Sit down, old man." Wilson moved toward O'Brien's table. "Before you fall down." O'Brien stood instead, all 6 feet of age military bearing. "Son, I've been knocked down by professionals. You don't qualify. Wilson shoved O'Brien back into his seat, the force unnecessary, cruel. The old veteran's coffee spilled across the table, the dark liquid spreading like blood across a battlefield. That's when Owena's mask slipped, just for a moment. The fear vanished from her eyes, replaced by something that made everyone in the room take an involuntary breath. It was the look of someone who'd seen real violence, who dealt real violence, who understood violence in a way that made this petty intimidation seem like children playing with toys. Then it was gone, replaced again by tears and trembling. "Please," she begged Cade, "just let us go. We'll think about the offer." "Think about it?" Cade squeezed harder. "You'll do more than think about it. You'll sign those papers by the end of business today, or things will get uncomfortable for your whole family." "Define uncomfortable," Owena said quietly. The question was odd enough to make Cade pause. "What?" "You said things would get uncomfortable. I'm just wondering what your definition of uncomfortable is. Because I've been uncomfortable. I've been in places where uncomfortable meant choosing between drinking water that might be contaminated or dying of dehydration, where uncomfortable meant staying awake for 72 hours because sleeping meant someone might die. So when you say uncomfortable, I need to know if we're talking about the same thing." The words were delivered in a soft, almost dreamy voice, but they landed with weight. Cade released her wrist, taking a step back without meaning to. Rodriguez kept filming, but his commentary had stopped. Thompson and Wilson exchanged glances. Something was off here. The woman sounded like she was rambling, traumatized maybe, but the specificity of her words suggested experience, not imagination. Owena's laptop displayed military-grade encryption software, the kind used by defense contractors to protect classified data. These advanced security systems could detect intrusion attempts in milliseconds. Sheriff Kent pulled out his notebook, making a show of official business. "I'm going to need everyone to calm down. Mrs. Wilson, Ms. Wilson, I suggest you head home and consider Mr. Croft's offer carefully. Mr. Jennings, perhaps you and your crew should get back to work." "We're not done here," Cade said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. "No," Owena agreed quietly. "We're not." She helped her mother to her feet with surprising ease, as if the older woman weighed nothing. Shadow moved with them, maintaining his position between them and the threats, his movement so smooth it looked choreographed. 15 minutes, Owena whispered again, glancing at her watch. "What's in 15 minutes?" Rodriguez asked, having caught the whisper on his phone's microphone. "Nothing," Owena said quickly. Too quickly. Thompson stepped closer, studying her. There was something about the way she moved, economical, efficient, no wasted motion. And the dog. He'd seen military working dogs before, on TV, in videos. They moved like that, purposeful, trained. "You serve?" Thompson asked suddenly. Owena's eyes widened behind her glasses, the perfect picture of confusion. "Serve? I'm a waitress. I serve coffee and eggs." But Thompson noticed she hadn't actually denied it. Politicians did that. Lawyers did that. Said something that sounded like an answer, but wasn't. The bell above the door chimed again. Sterling Croft entered like he owned the place, which in a way, he did. His suit cost more than most people in the diner made in 3 months. His shoes clicked against the floor with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no and meant it. "What seems to be the problem here?" Croft's voice was smooth, cultured, the voice of boardrooms and backroom deals. "No problem, Mr. Croft," Kent said quickly. "Just discussing your generous offer with the Wilsons." Croft's eyes found Alara, dismissing her in a glance before settling on Owena. "And you are?" "Her daughter," Owena said simply. "Ah, perhaps you can inject some sense into this situation. Your mother is standing in the way of a $17 million development project. That's not just affecting my business, it's affecting the entire town's economic future." $17 million, Owena repeated. "And you're offering her what? 300,000 for land worth maybe 150 on a good day?" Croft smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. "It's a very generous offer, considering." "Considering what?" "Considering the alternatives." The threat was polished, professional, but it was still a threat. Everyone in the diner heard it. Chloe's phone captured it. Liam's professional camera recorded it in high definition from the window. Shadow's ears swiveled, tracking something outside. Owena's eyes flicked to the window for just a moment, then back to Croft. 13 minutes, she murmured. "You keep saying that," Kate interrupted. 13 minutes until what? Until this becomes a federal matter, Owena said softly. The words dropped into the conversation like a grenade. Kent's hand went to his service weapon. Croft's smile vanished. Cade and his crew tensed. Federal? Kent laughed, but it sounded forced. You're delusional. This is a simple property dispute. Is it? Owena asked. A development company using local law enforcement to intimidate elderly citizens into selling property, using threats of violence, assault and battery in front of 30 witnesses? That sounds like conspiracy, racketeering. RICO predicates, if I understand correctly. She said it all in that same soft, confused voice, like she was just thinking out loud, like she didn't really understand what she was saying. But the words were too specific, too accurate. Croft stepped forward. Who are you, really? Nobody, Owena said. Just a waitress trying to protect her mother. Waitresses don't know about RICO predicates. This one watches a lot of crime shows. Mayor Garrison Thorne chose that moment to enter the diner, his timing as suspicious as Kent's had been. He surveyed the scene with practiced political eyes, immediately understanding the dynamics. Mr. Croft, Sheriff Kent, perhaps we should discuss this in my office, the mayor suggested. We're discussing it here, Croft said coldly. In front of witnesses. I want everyone to understand what happens when people stand in the way of progress. From the corner booth, barely visible in the shadows, Evelyn Thorne watched her husband. Her hands twisted her napkin into knots, her face a mask of internal conflict. She'd been married to the mayor for 23 years. She'd watched him change from an idealistic young politician to this. Owena's eyes found Evelyn's for just a moment. Something passed between them, a communication that transcended words. Evelyn's hand moved to her purse, then stopped. 10 minutes, Owena said. Stop saying that, Cade exploded. 10 minutes until what? Until the backup I called arrives, Sheriff Kent said smoothly, lying with practiced ease. I've already put in the call. This situation needs to be resolved peacefully. But Owena shook her head slightly. That's not who I'm timing. Shadow's posture changed subtly. The dog's head turned toward the door, muscles coiling. Owena's hand dropped to his head, fingers finding the spot behind his ears that meant ready. Are you threatening us? Thompson stepped forward aggressively. No, Owena said. I don't make threats. I make assessments. I assess that in approximately 9 minutes, this situation will be out of your control. Our control? Croft laughed. Little girl, you have no idea who you're dealing with. I own this town. The police, the mayor, the county commissioners, they all dance to my tune. But not the federal government, Owena said quietly. You called the feds? Kent's voice rose. On what authority? On the authority of a citizen witnessing multiple felonies being committed by local officials, Owena replied. It was a bluff. Had to be a bluff. But something about her certainty, her calmness, made them all wonder. Rodriguez had stopped filming, his phone hanging loose in his hand. This is getting weird, Cade. Shut up, Cade snapped. She's nobody. Look at her. Scared the little waitress playing tough. But Thompson was looking, really looking, and what he saw didn't match what he heard. The woman's stance was perfectly balanced. Her breathing was controlled. Her eyes tracked multiple targets simultaneously. And there was something else. Something he'd noticed when her sleeve had ridden up slightly. The edge of something on her skin, too dark to be a bruise, too organized to be random. Roll up your sleeves, Thompson said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. What? Owena's confusion seemed genuine this time. Your sleeves, roll them up. I don't have to show you anything. No, Thompson agreed, but I'm curious what you're hiding. Owena's hand moved unconsciously to her left forearm, a tell that everyone noticed. Nothing to hide, nothing to fear, Cade said, his confidence returning. Show us your arms, sweetheart, unless you've got track marks you're ashamed of. The insult was calculated, cruel. Ilara gasped. O'Brien stood again. Even some of Cade's own crew looked uncomfortable. Owena's face went very still. Track marks, she repeated softly. You think I'm an addict? Would explain the paranoia, Kent suggested. The rambling about federal investigations. 7 minutes, Owena said. Shadow's tail stopped moving entirely. The dog was now in full working mode, evaluating threats with the cold efficiency of a weapon system. The door chimed again. Liam Webb entered, his camera now hanging around his neck. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've been filming from outside. I run a YouTube channel with about 50,000 subscribers. That assault? It's already uploaded. Already has 3,000 views. The room went silent. You filmed this? Croft's voice was dangerously quiet. Every second, Liam confirmed. The assault, the threats, the sheriff ignoring it all. It's all documented, all uploaded, all backing up to cloud storage as we speak. Kent moved toward Liam. I'm going to need that camera. No, Liam said simply. You're not. I can arrest you for interfering with an investigation. What investigation? Liam asked. You haven't investigated anything. You haven't taken a single witness statement. You haven't even asked Mr. Jennings to step away from the victims. The word victims hung in the air. It reframed everything. Turned Cade from powerful to criminal, turned Alara from obstacle to survivor. If you've ever witnessed someone standing up to a bully, share that moment below. Sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the most power. Chloe found her courage. I've been recording too, and I've been live streaming to Facebook. My aunt's a lawyer in Helena. She's watching right now. She says to tell you, Sheriff Kent, that conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law is a federal crime. Kent's face went pale. The situation was spiraling out of control. This was supposed to be simple. Intimidate an old woman, force a sale, collect their payoffs. Now there were cameras, lawyers, federal crimes being mentioned. Everyone needs to calm down, Mayor Thorne said, trying to assert authority he didn't really have. I am calm, Owena said. And she was. Perfectly, unnaturally calm. The kind of calm that comes from being in situations where calm is the only thing standing between you and death. Cade made a decision, a bad one. He reached for Alara again, planning to use the old woman as leverage. Owena moved. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't showy. She simply stepped between Cade and her mother, her body becoming a barrier. But the way she moved, the economy of motion, the perfect positioning, it was like watching water flow. Natural, inevitable, efficient. Don't, she said. One word, quiet, but it carried weight that made Cade freeze. Or what? Cade challenged. 5 minutes, Owena said instead of answering. Shadow had repositioned himself without anyone noticing, now standing where he could intercept any approach to either woman. His training was showing, the kind that cost the government tens of thousands of dollars to instill. Thompson pulled out his own phone, not to record, but to search. He typed quickly, looking for something. His eyes widened at what he found. Cade, he said urgently, we should go. What? Why? Thompson showed him the phone screen. A news article from 18 months ago. Operation Hammerfall, Joint Federal Task Force, took down a corruption ring in North Dakota. Same pattern. Developers, local officials, intimidation tactics. So, Cade tried to sound dismissive, but sweat had begun beading on his forehead. So, the lead operative was never identified. They called her Ghost 7. Description matches. Everyone turned to look at Owena. She laughed, the sound surprisingly genuine. You think I'm a federal agent? I'm flattered, but I'm just a waitress. Ask anyone. I've been working at the Mountain View Cafe for 6 months. It was true. Everyone knew that. She served coffee and pie, remembered everyone in his orders, and never caused trouble. Just a quiet woman, taking care of her elderly mother. But now, looking at her, they saw other things. The way she'd moved, the dog's training, the specific legal knowledge, the countdown she kept maintaining. 3 minutes, she said. What happens in 3 minutes? Croft demanded. I imagine that's when the FBI field office in Helena finishes processing the live stream footage and decides whether to deploy their rapid response team. You imagine? Kent pressed. You don't know? How would I know? Owena asked innocently. I'm just guessing, based on, crime shows. But her eyes had changed again. The tears were gone. The trembling had stopped. She stood there, small, unimposing, but somehow filling more space than she should. Evelyn Thorne stood up in her corner booth. Stop this! Everyone turned to look at the mayor's wife. Garrison, stop this now! It's gone too far! Evelyn, sit down! The mayor ordered. No. She pulled something from her purse, a USB drive. I won't be part of this anymore. She walked over to Owena and held out the drive. Everything's on here, the payments, the threats, the other properties they have taken. 3 years of evidence. The mayor's face went white. Evelyn, what have you done? What I should have done months ago, she replied. Cade lunged for the USB drive. Shadow intercepted him with a precision that spoke of hundreds of hours of training. The dog didn't bite, didn't attack, simply positioned himself so Cade's momentum carried him into the animal's solid mass, sending the contractor stumbling backward. 2 minutes, Owena said, pocketing the USB drive. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and for the first time she smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Change of plans, she announced. They're ahead of schedule. The sound of vehicles approaching fast filled the air. Not sirens, something else. The deep rumble of heavy SUVs, the kind the government used when they meant business. Kent went for his gun. Nobody moves. Shadow's growl filled the diner, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere much deeper and more dangerous than a dog's throat. It was the kind of growl that millions of years of evolution had programmed humans to fear. I wouldn't, Owena said to Kent. Shadow doesn't like it when people point weapons at his handler. Handler? Kent's voice cracked. You said you were a waitress. I am a waitress. I'm also doing other things. The vehicles were getting closer. Through the window, black SUVs could be seen approaching fast, eating up the distance with mechanical precision. 1 minute, Owena said. Croft ran for the back exit. Wilson and Rodriguez followed. Thompson hesitated, looking between Cade and Owena. I didn't know, Thompson said to her. About your mom, I mean. I didn't know it would go this far. Owena studied him for a moment. But you knew it was wrong. Thompson nodded, ashamed. Yeah, I knew. Then you have a choice to make in the next 30 seconds. Thompson made it. He sat down at the nearest table, hands visible, phone placed screen down in front of him. Surrender. 0, Owena said. The SUV screeched to a halt outside. Doors opened. Federal agents in tactical gear poured out, weapons drawn but not raised, moving with the coordinated precision of a well-rehearsed dance. The lead agent entered the diner, his eyes immediately finding Owena. Something passed between them, a recognition that went beyond words. Secure the scene, he ordered his team. Then to Owena, Ghost 7, you're early. The silence that followed was deafening. Every person in the diner turned to stare at Owena, their minds trying to reconcile the quiet waitress they thought they knew with this new reality. Ghost 7? O'Brien whispered. The Ghost 7? From Kandahar? Owena didn't confirm or deny. She knelt beside her mother, who was looking at her with a mixture of pride and sorrow. I'm sorry, Mom, Owena said softly. I wanted to handle this quietly. I know, sweetheart, Ilara replied, touching her daughter's face. Your father would be proud. Kent dropped his weapon, hands raised. He knew when he was beaten. The mayor stood frozen, watching his world collapse in real time. Cade was on his knees in the parking lot, federal agents zip-tying his hands behind his back. But the real drama was in the quiet moment between mother and daughter, between the truth finally revealed and the lies that had protected them both. How long? Ilara asked. 6 months, Owena admitted. When I found out about Croft's interest in the lake house, I knew it wasn't random. The geological surveys, the mineral rights. There's more under that land than just memories, Mom. Uranium, the lead federal agent said. Undisclosed uranium deposits, worth approximately $40 million. Croft knew. He's been buying up land all over the county using the same tactics. The scope of the conspiracy became clear. This wasn't just about one house, one family. It was about systematic corruption, resources worth millions, and the willingness to destroy anyone who stood in the way. But how did you know? Chloe asked Owena. How did you know to be here, to be ready? Owena's hand found Shadow's head, the dog leaning into her touch. Because corruption follows patterns. The same players, the same methods, just different locations. When you've seen it enough times, you learn to recognize the signs. You've been investigating this whole time, Kent said, understanding dawning on his face. The waitress job, the scary act, it was all covered. The fear was real, Owena corrected. Fear for my mother. Fear that I wouldn't be able to protect her. Fear that I'd have to watch another innocent person get crushed by greed. She stood, and somehow, despite being the smallest person in the room, she seemed to tower over everyone. Staff Sergeant Owena Wilson, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, retired, she said formally, also known as SEAL Team 6, designation Ghost 7. The revelation rippled through the diner like a shockwave. SEAL Team 6, the unit that got bin Laden, the most elite of the elite. And she'd been serving them coffee and pie for 6 months. Thompson spoke from his table, his voice small. The scars. When you reached up to get the coffee filters yesterday, I saw scars on your side. Shrapnel, Owena confirmed. Afghanistan, 2015. Operation Enduring Freedom. But you're... Rodriguez started, then stopped. A woman, Owena supplied. Yes. Despite what you might have heard, women have been in combat for years. We just didn't advertise it. The FBI's financial forensics team used specialized tracking software to trace Croft's offshore accounts. Modern financial investigation tools could uncover money trails across dozens of international banks simultaneously. The lead agent was coordinating with his team, securing evidence, and making statements. The diner had become a crime scene, but also something else. A place where truth had finally overcome lies, where justice had arrived in the most unexpected form. We've been tracking Croft's operation for 18 months, the agent explained to the room at large. But we couldn't get anyone on the inside. Local law enforcement was compromised. Residents were too scared to talk. Then Ghost 7 volunteered. Volunteered? Liam asked, still filming. She volunteered to put herself and her mother in danger? My mother was already in danger, Owena said. The moment Croft decided he wanted our land, we were targets. The only question was whether we'd be victims or bait. Bait, Ilara said with a small smile. You made us bait. High-value bait, Owena corrected. The kind that makes criminals get sloppy, overconfident. The kind that makes them reveal their entire network. Evelyn Thorne was crying silently, still clutching her purse. I wanted to come forward months ago, but Garrison, he said it was for the greater good, that the town needed the development money. The greater good, Owena repeated, her voice hard. It's amazing what people will justify in the name of the greater good. The mayor tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Shadow was there, not attacking, just being an immovable object in his path. The mayor stumbled, fell, and didn't try to get up. It's over, Garrison, Evelyn said to her husband. It's all over. The federal agents were efficient, thorough. Phones were collected as evidence. Statements were recorded. Cade, Wilson, and Rodriguez were loaded into separate vehicles. Kent was read his rights, his badge and gun confiscated with clinical precision. But in the center of it all, Owena knelt beside her mother again, the warrior facade cracking to show the daughter underneath. I'm sorry I lied to you, she said. You didn't lie, Ilara said firmly. You just didn't tell me everything. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. You were protecting me, just like your father would have. The mention of her father made Owena's eyes close briefly. He would have handled this differently. No, Ilara said. He would have done exactly what you did, protected his family, served his country, and stood against corruption. That's who he was. That's who you are. O'Brien had stood up again, his old joints protesting. He walked over to Owena and, with deliberate precision, saluted. Not the casual gesture of a civilian, but the sharp, precise salute of a veteran, honoring another warrior. Corporal Timothy O'Brien, United States Army, retired, he said. It's an honor, Ghost 7. Owena returned the salute, her form perfect despite the emotional weight of the moment. The honor is mine, Corporal. One by one, other veterans in the diner stood. There were more than anyone had realized. The cook in the kitchen, 2 truckers at the counter, an elderly woman in the corner booth. They all saluted, creating a moment of profound respect in the midst of chaos. Chloe was still recording, tears streaming down her face. This would go viral within hours. The story of a small-town hero, a daughter protecting her mother, a warrior hiding in plain sight. What happens now? Liam asked, his journalistic instincts overriding his shock. Now? The lead federal agent looked around. Now we build a federal case that will dismantle Croft's entire organization. We protect the witnesses. We restore the rule of law to this county. And them? Thompson asked, gesturing to Owena and Ilara. They'll be placed in protective custody until the trial, the agent said. No, Owena said firmly. We're not leaving. Ghost 7, with all due respect, Croft has resources. He has connections. You'll be targets. Owena smiled, the expression transforming her face from pleasant to predatory. We've been targets for 6 months. We're still here. They're not. She helped her mother to her feet, Shadow immediately taking position beside them. Besides, Owena continued, someone needs to run the coffee shop. People depend on their morning caffeine. It was absurd. Talking is about serving coffee after everything that had just happened. But it was also perfect. A reminder that heroes don't always wear capes or uniforms. Sometimes they wear aprons and serve pie. The USB drive, the federal agent reminded her. Owena handed it over. Everything Evelyn said is true. 3 years of evidence, financial records, recorded conversations, emails. Croft was systematic, but he was also arrogant. He documented everything because he never thought he'd be caught. How did you know Evelyn would help? The agent asked. I didn't, but I saw her watching and saw her conflict. Sometimes people just need permission to do the right thing. They need to see that someone else is willing to stand up first. Evelyn had collapsed into a chair, the weight of her decision finally hitting her. 23 years of marriage, gone. No, Owena said gently. The marriage was gone the moment he chose corruption over conscience. You just stopped pretending. The diner was slowly emptying as agents escorted witnesses to separate vehicles for formal statements. But the core group remained. Owena, Ilara, O'Brien, Chloe, Liam, and Thompson, who still sat at his table, having chosen his deed. I'll testify, Thompson said suddenly. Whatever you need. I'll testify against all of them. That's brave, Owena acknowledged. No, it's not. Brave is what you did. Putting yourself in danger for 6 months, knowing any day they might figure out who you were. I just sat down when the feds showed up. You sat down before they showed up, Owena corrected. That's what matters. You chose before you knew the outcome. The distinction mattered, and Thompson understood it. In that moment of crisis, he'd chosen conscience over crew, right over loyalty to wrong. What would you do if you saw this happening to an elderly person? Let me know your thoughts. Real strength often shows itself in unexpected ways. Shadow suddenly alert, his ears swiveling toward the door. Owena's hand dropped to his head, reading his signals. What is it, boy? She asked. The dog's response was a low whine, not threatening but concerned. Through the window, another vehicle was approaching. Not a federal SUV, but a plain sedan. Government plates but different series. The lead federal agent spoke into his radio, then frowned. That's not one of ours. Owena's entire demeanor shifted. The pleasant waitress vanished entirely, replaced by something dangerous, coiled, ready. Shadow, defensive position. The dog immediately placed himself between the door and Ilara, his training switching from protection to active defense. The sedan stopped. A single figure emerged, tall, wearing a crisp military uniform. Army. Full colonel. Stand down, the federal agent ordered his team, recognizing something in the approaching figure's bearing. The colonel entered the diner, his eyes immediately finding Owena. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, some silent communication passing between them. Ghost 7, the colonel said finally. Colonel Harrison, Owena replied. You're out of the service, Staff Sergeant. You didn't have to do this. Yes, sir, I did. The colonel's attention shifted to Ilara. Mrs. Wilson, I knew your husband. He was a good man. He was, Ilara agreed simply. He'd be proud of what his daughter did here today. He'd be prouder if the system had worked without requiring his daughter to risk her life, Ilara said with quiet steel. The colonel nodded, accepting the rebuke. You're right, ma'am. The system failed. That's why we need people like your daughter, people who step up when institutions step back. Why are you here, Colonel? Owena asked. To offer you a job. The words hung in the air. Everyone in the diner leaned in, even the federal agents. I'm retired, sir. From the SEALs, yes, but your country still needs you. There are other Crofts out there, other corrupt networks preying on innocent Americans. We're forming a new task force, joint military and federal law enforcement. We need someone with your skills, your instincts. My mother needs me, Owena said. Your mother needs you alive, the colonel corrected. Croft has connections you haven't even discovered yet. International connections. The uranium wasn't just for domestic sale. The implications were chilling. This wasn't just local corruption, it was potentially international espionage, nuclear materials, and national security. How long have you known? Owena asked. We've suspected for 3 months, but suspicion isn't proof. What you've uncovered here, what you've documented, it's the thread that will unravel everything. Owena looked at her mother. Ilara nodded slightly. What kind of task force? Owena asked. The kind that doesn't officially exist, the colonel said. The kind that operates in the shadows to protect people who don't even know they need protecting. Ghost operations, Owena said, understanding. Your designation would remain Ghost 7. Your cover would remain intact. To the world, you'd still be Owena Wilson, small-town waitress. But when we need you, you'd activate me. Yes, it was an impossible choice. Safety and anonymity versus duty and danger. The quiet life she'd tried to build versus the warrior she'd been trained to be. Shadow whined softly, sensing his handler's distress. His nose nudged her hand, offering comfort the way only a dog could. "I need time to think," Owena said. "You have 24 hours, the colonel replied. "After that, the offer disappears, and you'll need to enter standard witness protection." He turned to leave, then paused. "Your father saved my life once. In Fallujah, 2004. I never got to repay that debt. Maybe this is my chance." He left without waiting for a response. The diner fell silent again, everyone processing what they'd just heard. "You're going to take it," Ilara said. It wasn't a question. "Mom, you're going to take it because that's who you are. You can't stand by when people need help. You couldn't when you were 7 and stood up to those boys bullying the Martinez kid. You couldn't when you enlisted after Dad died. You can't now." Owena's composure finally cracked. Tears, real this time, rolled down her cheeks. "I just wanted to keep you safe." "You did, sweetheart. You did. But there are other mothers out there, other families being threatened by men like Croft. If you can help them, then I have to," Owena finished. Owena enrolled Shadow in an advanced canine certification program where military dogs learn specialized commands through intensive behavioral training. These programs transformed service animals into precision tools. The federal agent in charge approached them. "We need to get you both to a safe house while we process the scene." "The lake house," Owena said. "We'll go to the lake house. That's a potential crime scene. It's also the most defensible position in the county. 3 sight lines, single access road, natural barriers on 2 sides. If anyone comes for us there, we'll see them coming from a mile away." The agent looked at her with new respect. "You've thought this through. I've had 6 months to think it through." As they prepared to leave, Chloe approached hesitantly. "Ms. Wilson, Owena, I just wanted to say thank you for protecting your mom, for protecting all of us." "I didn't protect all of you," Owena said honestly. "I used all of you as cover, as witnesses, as pressure points. I'm not a hero, Chloe. I'm just someone trained to complete missions." "Maybe," Chloe said. "But you completed this one." Thompson stood as they passed his table. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About everything." "Make it worth something," Owena told him. "When you testify, tell the whole truth. Not just about Croft and Cade, but about yourself. About how easy it was to go along, to justify small wrongs until they became big ones." "I will," Thompson promised. Outside, the Montana sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. The parking lot was full of federal vehicles, agents collecting evidence, witnesses being interviewed. It looked like something from a movie, except it was real, happening in their small town. O'Brien was standing by the door, waiting. As Owena passed, he pressed something into her hand, a challenge coin, worn smooth from years of handling. "2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment," he said. "Your dad's unit gave me this after Mogadishu. Figured it should come back to the family." Owena closed her fingers around the coin, feeling its weight, its history. "Thank you." "No, ma'am. Thank you for reminding us that warriors come in all shapes and sizes." As they walked to the federal SUV that would take them to the lake house, Shadow padding beside them, Liam called out, "Wait! I need to know." "The 17 minutes. You kept counting down. What was that about?" Owena paused, looking back. "Response time from the Helena field office to here, assuming they were already mobilized and positioned at the county line. But how did you know they were positioned?" "Because I told them to be, this morning, when I made Cade's coffee with the special ingredient." Everyone frozen. "You poisoned him?" Kent asked from where he was being loaded into a vehicle. "No, I gave him a mild emetic that would kick in about 6 hours later. Just enough to make him irritable, aggressive, prone to bad decisions. The kind of decisions that would escalate a situation from intimidation to assault." The calculation of it was chilling. She had planned not just for confrontation, but for specific reactions, specific escalations. "You manipulated everything," Croft said as he was dragged past. "The whole thing was a setup." "No," Owena corrected. "I just gave you rope. You chose to hang yourself with it." The federal agent helped Ilara into the SUV while Owena loaded Shadow into the back. As they pulled away from Rosewood Diner, Owena looked back at the scene. Local news vans were already arriving. The story would be nationwide by morning. "Are you ready for this?" the agent asked. "Once this goes public, Ghost 7 won't be a secret anymore." "Ghost 7 was never meant to be a secret forever," Owena replied. "Just long enough to complete the mission." The SUV drove through the small town, past the coffee shop where Owena had worked her cover job, past the hardware store where Kate had planned his intimidation tactics, past the mayor's office where corruption had festered for years. If this story of justice hits home for you, that like button helps more people discover these powerful moments. Subscribe for more stories where underdogs become heroes, and consider hitting thanks if you want to support the channel. At the lake house, as promised, the sightlines were perfect. The structure itself was modest, built with loving care by a man who'd wanted nothing more than a quiet place to raise his family. But Owena saw it differently now, saw the defensive positions, the choke points, the fields of fire. "You turned our home into a fortress," Ilara observed. "I turned our home into what it needed to be," Owena corrected. Inside, everything looked normal. Family photos on the walls, her father's flag in its triangle case, her mother's quilts on the chairs. But Owena knew about the hidden cameras, the motion sensors, the panic room she'd installed in what used to be a closet. "How long?" Ilara asked again, but this time she meant something different. "How long, Mom? How long have you been Ghost 7? Really?" Owena set down her bag, Shadow immediately beginning his security patrol of the house. "Since 2013, the designation anyway. The training started in 2009, before your father died? Yes. He knew I was special operations. He didn't know the specifics." They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Owena had eaten breakfast as a child, where her father had helped her with homework, where she'd told her parents she was enlisting. "Tell me about Kandahar," Ilara said. "Mom, I need to know, the thing everyone keeps referencing. What happened in Kandahar?" Owena was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the wooden table. "Classified. I'm your mother. And it's still classified." But then she continued, her voice soft. "What I can tell you is that 7 operators went into a valley. 1 came out. The mission was completed, but the cost..." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Ilara reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "Survivor's guilt," Ilara said. It wasn't a question. "The psychiatrists call it post-traumatic stress. I call it remembering. Every face, every name, every family they left behind. Is that why you came home? Why did you really come home?" "I came home because you needed me, because Croft was circling, but also, yes, because I needed to remember who I was before I became Ghost 7. "And did you?" "No, because Ghost 7 is who I am. It's who I've been since the moment I understood that there are wolves in the world, and someone needs to stand between them and the sheep." Shadow returned from his patrol, sitting at Owena's feet with a soft woof that meant all clear. "Good boy," she said, rubbing his ears. "Good boy." The federal agent knocked on the door. "Ma'am, we've swept the property. You're clear. We'll have agents posted on the access road and surveillance drones overhead." "Thank you," Owena said. "There's one more thing. We found something in Croft's office. A list." "What kind of list?" "Properties, families, across 6 states, all with geological anomalies suggesting rare earth minerals or uranium deposits. Your house was just one of 17 targets. The scope of it was staggering. How many families would have been destroyed? How many Ilaras would have been intimidated, threatened, hurt?" "The other 16?" Owena asked. "We're mobilizing teams now. Thanks to what you uncovered here, we can stop them." After the agent left, Owena and Ilara sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun finish its descent behind the mountains. The lake reflected the dying light, turning the water to liquid gold. "Your father proposed to me here," Ilara said suddenly, "right on that dock. He was so nervous he dropped the ring in the water." "Did he find it?" "No. He dove in, fully clothed, and searched for an hour, finally gave up, and proposed with a piece of string tied in a circle. Said the real ring didn't matter, just the promise. That sounds like Dad. We found the ring 3 years later, low water season, just sitting there in the mud, waiting. Like it was meant to be, like it was waiting for the right time." They both understood the metaphor. Some things wait, some truths hide until the moment they're needed most. The phone rang, not Owena's regular phone, but the encrypted one she'd hidden in the flour canister. Only 3 people had that number. Wilson, she answered. Ghost 7, this is command. The colonel's offer stands, but we need an answer sooner than 24 hours. We have a situation developing in Colorado. What kind of situation? The kind that needs someone who can be invisible until they need to be deadly. Owena looked at her mother. Ilara nodded. I'll need conditions, Owena said. Name them. My mother's protection is non-negotiable. Shadow stays with me, and I choose my missions. There was a pause. The first two are approved. The third, you can refuse missions, but we choose what to offer. Fair enough? There's a helicopter inbound. ETA 30 minutes. I haven't said yes yet. No, but you haven't said no either. And in my experience, Ghost 7 doesn't waste time on things she's not going to do. The call ended. Owena set the phone down and looked at her mother. Colorado, Ilara said. Never been there. You're not coming. I'm not staying here alone either. If you're going back to work, I'm going somewhere safe. Maybe stay with your Aunt Ruth in Florida. You hate Florida. I hate being used as leverage against my daughter more. It was practical, sensible, and exactly what Owena should have expected from the woman who'd raised her. The sound of rotors became audible in the distance. The helicopter was early. They always were when the mission was urgent. Before you go, Ilara said, standing and walking to the bookshelf. She pulled out a leather journal, worn and weathered. Your father kept this, his missions, his thoughts. He wanted you to have it if anything happened to him. Owena took the journal, feeling its weight. Why didn't you give this to me before? Because before you were just my daughter. Now you're Ghost 7. Now you'll understand what he wrote. She opened it to a random page, her father's handwriting, precise and clear. The hardest part isn't the missions, it's coming home. It's looking at your family and knowing they'll never understand where you've been, what you've done, but that's also the point. We go into the darkness so they can stay in the light. Tears blurred her vision. Her father had been in special operations too. She'd never known. Delta Force, Ilara said quietly. Retired after Mogadishu. That's where he met O'Brien. You knew? I knew he was more than just an army. I knew he had nightmares. I knew he checked the perimeter every night before bed. I knew he loved us enough to leave that world behind. But he didn't leave it behind. Not really. No. It followed him home. It always does. The question is, what you do with it. The helicopter was visible now, a black shadow against the darkening sky. Shadow's ears tracked its approach, but he showed no signs of distress. Military helicopters were familiar to him. I have to go, Owena said. I know. They embraced, mother and daughter, survivor and protector. The women the Wilson men had loved and left behind. Be safe, Ilara whispered. I'll be smart, Owena corrected. Safe isn't always an option. She grabbed her go-bag, always packed, always ready. Shadow fell into heel position without being commanded. They walked out onto the lawn as the helicopter descended, its rotors whipping the grass into patterns that looked like waves. The side door opened. A familiar face appeared, someone from Kandahar, someone who shouldn't have been there. Marcus? Owena breathed. Hey, Ghost, heard you needed a ride. Marcus Reaper Rodriguez, Ghost 3, supposedly killed in action 18 months ago, very much alive and grinning at her from the helicopter. You're dead, she said flatly. Got better. Are you coming or not? She turned back to look at her mother one more time. Ilara stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm light of home, hand raised in farewell. Then Owena climbed into the helicopter, Shadow leaping in beside her. The door closed. The aircraft lifted. The lake house grew smaller below, but somehow Owena knew she'd be back. This wasn't goodbye. This was just the next mission. Colorado? She asked Marcus as they banked east. Colorado's just the starting point, he replied. We've got a situation that makes your little Montana corruption case look like a parking ticket. How bad? Remember Volkov? Owena's blood went cold. Dmitry Volkov, arms dealer, terrorist facilitator, the man who had supplied the weapons that killed her team in Kandahar. He's dead. I watched him die. You watched him fall off a cliff. Big difference. And now he's back, selling something that makes uranium look like candy. What could be worse than uranium? Marcus handed her a tablet. On it was a single image, a biological weapon containment unit with U.S. military markings. He's selling our own weapons back to our enemies, weapons that officially don't exist. The implications were staggering. If America's biological weapons program was exposed, if those weapons were used, how many units? Owena asked. 12 that we know of. each one capable of killing 1,000,000 people. And Colorado? That's where the buyer is meeting him, tomorrow night. 24 hours to stop a sale that could kill 12 million people. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of mission Ghost 7 was built for. Who else is on the team? She asked. Ghost 2, Ghost 5, and now Ghost 7. Command wanted to bring in Ghost 1, but Ghost 1 is gone, Owena said firmly. Lieutenant Commander James Titan Walsh had died saving her life in Kandahar. His death was not negotiable, not questionable. Yeah, so you're a senior operator. The weight of command settled on her shoulders. 3 ghosts against Volkov's entire network. The odds were impossible. Then again, 1 ghost had survived Kandahar when 7 should have died. Sometimes impossible was just another word for Tuesday. Below them, Montana faded into darkness. Ahead, Colorado waited with its mountains and its secrets and its deadly rendezvous. But in the back of her mind, Owena carried other images. Her mother, safe in the lake house, Croft in federal custody, a small town free from corruption, justice served by a waitress who was more than she seemed. That was the point, really. The mask was never the uniform or the designation. The mask was normalcy, the pretense that heroes were obvious, that they stood out, that they announced themselves. The truth was simpler and more complex. Heroes served coffee. Heroes raised children. Heroes looked like everybody and nobody. They were the quiet ones who stood up when standing up meant standing alone. The helicopter flew on through the night, carrying Ghost 7 toward her next mission. But part of her remained in that diner, in that moment when the truth finally came out, when the mask finally fell. She'd been exposed. Her cover was blown. Ghost 7 was no longer a secret, and somehow that made her more dangerous than ever, because now she had nothing left to hide. The helicopter carved through the darkness toward Colorado, but Owena's mind remained fixed on the tablet in her hands. 12 biological weapons units, 12 million potential deaths. And somewhere in those mountains ahead, Dmitry Volkov was preparing to auction humanity's nightmare to the highest bidder. We need to go back, she said suddenly. Marcus looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Go back? Ghost, we have less than 20 hours to stop. My mother isn't safe. None of them are. If Volkov is alive, if he knows I'm alive, he'll use them against me. Your mother is under federal protection. Federal protection didn't stop Croft. It won't stop Volkov. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then spoke into his headset. Command, this is Ghost 3. Ghost 7 has concerns about civilian security in Montana. The response crackled through their earpieces. Ghost 7, this is Colonel Harrison. Your mother and the witnesses are being relocated to a secure military facility as we speak. Delta Force is handling security personally. Delta Force, her father's unit. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. Sir, Volkov has resources we haven't mapped. If he... Staff Sergeant Wilson, the colonel's voice cut through her protest. I give you my word. Your mother will be protected as if she were my own family. But right now, 12 million other families are counting on you to stop whatever Volkov has planned. Can you do that? Owena closed her eyes, forcing herself to compartmentalize. This was the job. This had always been the job. Personal came second to the mission. Yes, sir. Good. Ghost 2 and Ghost 5 are already on site in Denver. They've identified 3 of Volkov's advanced teams. We need you to... The helicopter lurched suddenly, alarm screaming. Marcus grabbed for the overhead rail as the pilot's voice filled their headsets. Missile lock! Deploying countermeasures! The world exploded in light and sound. Flares erupted from the helicopter's belly, drawing the heat-seeking missile away. The explosion was close enough to rock them again, Shadow pressing low against the floor, trained to remain calm even in chaos. They knew, Owena said, understanding flooding through her. Volkov knew we were coming. Impossible. This mission is completely black. Only 5 people knew. Another missile lock warning. This time the pilot didn't wait. He dropped the helicopter like a stone, the sudden descent making Owena's stomach leap into her throat. Trees rushed up to meet them, dark fingers reaching for the vulnerable aircraft. We're going down, the pilot announced. Brace for impact. Owena grabbed Shadow, wrapping herself around the dog as the helicopter hit the tree line. Branches shattered against the armored hull, the sound like machine gun fire. They bounced once, twice, then hit solid ground with a crash that drove all breath from her lungs. For a moment, there was only ringing silence. Then training kicked in. Marcus, status? Alive. Pilot? Unconscious but breathing, the co-pilot responded, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Radio's dead. GPS is fried. Owena forced herself to think through the pain in her ribs. They were down somewhere in eastern Montana or western North Dakota. Volkov's people had found them, which meant, we have to move, now. She kicked open the side door, Shadow leaping out ahead of her to scout. The night was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that meant someone was watching, waiting. Marcus grabbed their gear bags while Owena helped the co-pilot extract the unconscious pilot. They'd made it maybe 50 yards from the crash when the first shots rang out. "Contact left!" Marcus shouted, returning fire with his rifle. Owena dropped behind a fallen log, pulling the injured pilot with her. Her mind calculated angles, distances, probable enemy positions. 3 shooters, maybe 4. Professional spacing. These weren't local thugs. These were Volkov's people. "Shadow, hunt," she commanded. The dog vanished into the darkness, silent as his namesake. Within seconds, a scream pierced the night. 1 shooter down. "They're trying to flank right," the co-pilot said, his sidearm steadied despite his injury. "Let them," Owena replied. "Marcus, smoke out." The grenade landed between them and the flanking team, billowing white smoke that turned the forest into a ghost world. Through the chaos, Owena heard what she'd been waiting for, the distinctive crack of a sniper rifle from the ridge above. "Sniper, 2 o'clock high." But even as she called it out, she realized the sniper wasn't shooting at them. The rounds were impacting near the flanking team, driving them back. "What the hell?" Marcus muttered. A familiar voice crackled through the smoke. "Thought you could use some help, Ghost 7. Thompson, the contractor from the diner, who'd chosen to sit down rather than run. "But how?" "Questions later," Thompson called out. "You've got 6 more coming from the north. Local militia Volkov was hired. They don't know what they're hunting. 6 more. Plus, however many of Volkov's professionals were still out there. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and carrying wounded. We need to move, Owena decided. Thompson, can you cover our displacement? That's why I'm here. Liam's got his drone up, feeding me intel. Chloe's coordinating with emergency services, keeping them away. The whole town knows you're in trouble. The whole town. The people she'd served coffee to for 6 months. The people she'd lied to, used, protected. Why? She asked, even as they prepared to move. Because you stood up for Mrs. Wilson. Because you showed us what courage looks like. Because sometimes the waitress saves the town, and sometimes the town needs to save the waitress. Another burst of gunfire, closer now. Shadow materialized beside her, blood on his muzzle that wasn't his own. 2 down, Owena interpreted. Good boy. They moved through the forest, Thompson's rifle keeping the pursuers' heads down. But Owena knew they were being herded, pushed towards something. Volkov didn't do random things. Everything had a purpose. Marcus, are you feeling this? Yeah, it's too easy. They're letting us move. Trap? Has to be. But what choice did they have? The pilot was fading, needed medical attention soon. They couldn't fight a running battle through the forest all night. There's a ranger station 2 miles northeast, the co-pilot said, checking his paper map. Old-school navigation when everything electronic was compromised. That's where they want us to go, Owena said with certainty. Then we go somewhere else. No. The decision crystallized in her mind. We spring the trap, but on our terms. She pulled out her encrypted phone, the one that should have been dead like all their electronics. But it was working, showing 1 bar of signal. A message was waiting. Ghost 7, Volkov knows. Colorado was a trap. The weapons are in Montana. Your Montana. He's been there all along. Ghost 5. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The corruption, Croft's land grab, the uranium story. All of it had been covered for something bigger. Volkov had been using Croft's operation to move biological weapons through rural Montana, using the uranium mines as storage. The lake house, she breathed. He's going to the lake house. Where her mother would have been, if not for the federal protection. Where all of Alara's neighbors still were. Innocent families sitting on top of weaponized death. We have to go back, Marcus said, understanding immediately. You have to go back. I have something else to do. She looked at the ranger station through the trees, lit up like a Christmas tree. Volkov's people were there, waiting. They expected Ghost 7 to walk into their trap, so she would, just not the way they expected. Thompson, how many people from town came to help? About 30. Everyone who could grab a rifle and remembered which end was dangerous. 30 civilians against Volkov's trained killers. It should have been a massacre, but these weren't ordinary civilians. These were Montana folks who'd grown up hunting, who knew these woods like their own backyards. Tell them to converge on the ranger station, but stay hidden. Don't engage until my signal. What signal? They'll know. She turned to Marcus. Take the pilots and get to the lake. If the weapons are there, I'm not leaving you to face Volkov alone. You're not. I've got backup. She gestured to the darkness where Thompson and the others waited. Besides, someone needs to protect those families. That's you. Marcus wanted to argue, she could see it, but he also knew she was right. Division of resources, maximum coverage, basic tactics. Don't die, he said finally. Haven't yet. He disappeared into the forest with the injured pilots. Shadow whined softly, torn between following and staying. With me, boy. We've got work to do. She stripped off her tactical vest, removed most of her weapons. If she was walking into a trap, she'd walk in looking trapped, vulnerable, exactly what Volkov expected. The ranger station was 500 yards away. She could see movement in the windows, at least 6 operators inside, probably more. They'd be watching the approaches with night vision, thermal imaging. There was no way to sneak up, so she didn't try. Owena Wilson, Ghost 7, walked straight up the main path. No tactical approach, no cover, just a woman and her dog walking like they were out for an evening stroll. Hold fire, someone shouted from inside. Let her come. The door opened. A man stepped out, tall, scarred, familiar. Not Volkov, but someone else from Kandahar. Reeves, she said, thought you died in that valley. I did, Ghost 1 replied. Volkov brought me back. New employer, new purpose. The betrayal was a physical blow. Ghost 1, their leader, their legend, alive and turned. He showed me the truth, Reeves continued, about our missions, our purposes. We weren't heroes, Ghost 7. We were tools, disposable assets in games we never understood. So you became his tool instead. I became free to choose my battles, my rewards. He gestured to the station. Come inside. He wants to talk. I'm good here. It wasn't a request. Red dots appeared on her chest. Multiple snipers, multiple angles. Shadow growled, but she placed a hand on his head, calming him. Okay, she said. We'll talk. The inside of the ranger station had been transformed into a command center. Monitors, communication equipment, weapons. And in the center, in a wheelchair of all things, sat Dmitry Volkov. He was smaller than she remembered, shrunken. The fall from the cliff had broken his spine, left him paralyzed from the waist down. But his eyes were just as cold, just as calculating. Ghost 7, he said in accented English. The survivor, the one who wouldn't die. Volkov, the arms dealer who should have stayed dead. He laughed, the sound like grinding glass. Death is negotiable if you have enough money, just like everything else. Not everything. No, your town was for sale. Your sheriff, your mayor, even your mother's safety had a price. Everything is for sale, Ghost 7. The only question is currency. He wheeled closer. Shadow tensed, but the guns tracking them kept both still. I have a proposition for you. Not interested. You haven't heard it yet. He gestured to a monitor showing satellite imagery. 12 biological weapons, yes, but not for sale, for deployment, tonight. Unless you do exactly what I say. The screen changed, showing locations across Montana. Schools, hospitals, shopping centers. 12 towns, 12 weapons, all controlled from here. He held up a device, a dead man's switch. If I release this trigger, if my heart stops, if anyone interferes, they all deploy. Airborne dispersion. Death in 6 hours. You're insane. I'm practical. The weapons were never the product, Ghost 7. You were. You and the other ghosts. The perfect operators, trained by America, blooded in combat, worth more than any weapon. Understanding dawned. You want us to work for you. I want you to become what you were meant to be. Not servants to a government that sends you to die for politics, but free agents in a world that rewards excellence. Like Reeves? Reeves saw the truth. In Kandahar, your government sent you to die. The mission was compromised from the beginning. Someone wanted the Ghost team eliminated. You're lying. Am I? Volkov produced a tablet, swiping through files. Your mission briefing. And here, the intelligence assessment said it was a trap, date stamped 2 days before you deployed. They knew, Ghost 7. They sent you anyway. The documents looked real. The signatures, the classification stamps. Everything is authentic. Why would they? Because Ghost Team was too good, too independent. You asked questions, refused missions that didn't make sense. Someone decided you were more trouble than value. She wanted to deny it, but memories surfaced. Odd mission parameters. Intelligence that didn't match ground truth. The way backup never came when they called. Even if that's true, it doesn't justify this. Threatening innocent people. Innocent. Volkov laughed again. Your innocent townspeople are outside right now, ready to kill for you. Where's the innocence in that? Everyone is a killer, Ghost 7. Most just haven't been properly motivated. Through the window, she caught movement. Thompson and the others, getting into position. But if Volkov released that trigger, what do you want? Join me. You, the remaining ghosts. Work for me for 1 year. After that, you're free. Rich beyond imagining and free. And if I refuse, 12 towns die, starting with yours. That lake house your mother loves so much, it's ground zero for the first device. She looked at Reeves, searching for any sign of the man she'd once followed into hell. But his eyes were empty, sold. I need proof the weapons are real. Of course. Volkov typed on a keyboard. One monitor showed a live feed of a small device in what looked like a mine shaft. Detonate number 7. Wait, the explosion was small, contained, but the sensors immediately showed biological agent release. Contained in the mine, but real. Deadly real. 11 more, Ghost 7. Your choice. Shadow pressed against her leg, sensing her distress. Outside, Thompson and the others waited for a signal that might never come. You said 1 year? 1 year, you have my word. The word of a terrorist. The word of a businessman. I invest in people, Ghost 7. Reeves has been worth every penny. She looked at her former commander. Is it worth it? The money? It's not about money, Reeves said. It's about purpose, about using our skills without political restraint. Without moral restraint, you mean? Morality is luxury for people who don't have to make hard choices. She'd heard that before, from commanders sending them on suicide missions, from politicians justifying collateral damage, from everyone who thought the ends justified any means. I need to think. You have 5 minutes, Volkov said. Then I start detonating. 1 every minute until you decide. Owena walked to the window, Shadow beside her. Outside, she could barely make out the shapes of the townspeople. Chloe was out there, the girl who had found courage to film the truth. O'Brien, the old veteran who'd stood when it mattered. Even Thompson, who'd chosen redemption over easy wrong. They'd come to save her. The waitress who'd lied to them. The federal agent who'd used them as bait. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Ghost 7, this is Ghost 2. We have the lake house device. Ghost 5 has 3 more. Marcus found 2. 6 down, 6 to go. Stall him. Ghost Team. They were out there. Her team, her real team, dismantled Volkov's network piece by piece. But 6 devices were still armed, still deadly. 4 minutes, Volkov announced. She turned from the window. I'll do it, but conditions. You're not in a position to negotiate. I'm the only thing standing between you and 30 Montana hunters who know these woods better than your men ever will. You need me alive and cooperative. So, yes, I have conditions. Volkov's smile was thin. Speak. The devices get disabled, all of them, before I agree to anything. Then I have no leverage. You have Reeves, you have money, you have whatever information you claim about Kandahar. That's your leverage. Not enough. Then add this. I'll bring you the other ghosts. All of them. The full team, not just me. That got his attention. You can do this? They trust me. I survived Kandahar. I'm the only one they'd follow. It was a lie, but a plausible one. Volkov wanted to believe it. She could see it in his eyes. 3 minutes. Disable the devices, and I'll make the call right now. You can listen. You'll hear me convince them. Volkov considered, then nodded to Reeves. Do it. Sir? Do it. We have them anyway. Physical control of 6 weapons is better than electronic control of 12. Reeves moved to the control station, began typing. One by one, monitors showed devices going dark. Safed, harmless. Done, Reeves reported. Now, Volkov said, make your call. Owena pulled out her phone, dialed a number from memory. It rang twice. "Thompson, it's Owena. New plan." Thompson's voice was confused but trusting. "We're ready. On my signal, I need you to do exactly what I say. Remember that story O'Brien told about Mogadishu? The one about colored smoke?" There was a pause. They'd never discussed Mogadishu or colored smoke, but Thompson was quick. "Yeah, I remember. Do it now." The windows exploded inward, not from gunfire, but from smoke grenades. Red, green, yellow, purple. A rainbow of chaos that turned the ranger station into a kaleidoscope of confusion. Shadow moved instantly, taking Reeves at the throat, not killing, just holding, the way he'd been trained. Owena dove for Volkov's dead man switch, ripping it from his paralyzed hands. "Nobody moves," she shouted. "Nobody fires." Through the smoke, she could hear the townspeople breaching doors, windows. Not tactical, but enthusiastic. Volkov's men, confused by the smoke and sudden assault, hesitated just long enough. "Federal agents!" someone shouted. "Everybody down!" Marcus. He hadn't gone to the lake after all. He'd circled back with backup. The tactical team moved through the smoke with practiced efficiency. Volkov's men, caught between federal agents and armed townspeople, surrendered one by one. "Clear!" voices called out. "Clear!" All clear. The smoke began to dissipate. Owena stood over Volkov, the dead man switch in her hand. He looked up at her with something like respect. "You lied. I learned from the best. You taught me in Kandahar that trust is weakness. Then you learned the wrong lesson." Reeves, blood streaming from where Shadow had held him, laughed bitterly. "She learned the only lesson that matters, survival at any cost." "No," Owena said. "I learned that survival alone isn't living. It's just not dying." Federal agents were securing the scene, but she knelt beside Volkov's wheelchair. "Tell me the truth. About Kandahar. About why my team died." "The truth?" Volkov's eyes were fading as medical shock set in. "The truth is that war is business. Your team discovered something in that valley, something valuable. Someone decided it was worth more than 7 lives. What did we find? Ask your Colonel Harrison. Ask him about Project Prometheus." Before she could demand more, medics were pushing her aside, working to keep Volkov alive for interrogation. Reeves was in custody, silent now, his betrayal complete. Outside the ranger station, the scene was surreal. Federal agents, tactical operators, and local townspeople all mingled in the aftermath. Chloe was live streaming everything, narrating for her growing audience. "And that's how our town came together to stop a terrorist attack. Just regular people doing extraordinary things." O'Brien was sitting on the ranger station steps, his old joints finally protesting. Thompson stood nearby, his hunting rifle still in hand. "Nice shooting," Owena told him. "Nice lying," he replied, "though I have no idea what signal you were actually giving me. Any signal, any chaos, I just needed confusion." "You got it." Marcus approached Ghost 2 and Ghost 5 with him. Her team, what was left of it. "All devices secured," Ghost 2 reported. "Local hazmat is handling disposal. Casualties? 3 of Volkov's men died. 6 wounded. No civilian casualties. No civilian casualties. In a running firefight through Montana wilderness, untrained townspeople had helped take down professional killers without losing anyone. It was impossible. It was a miracle. It was community. "Ghost 7, Colonel Harrison's voice came through her earpiece. "Outstanding work. Sir, about Kandahar, about Project Prometheus. Classified staff sergeant, and above your pay grade. My entire team died for something above my pay grade? Your team died serving their country. Honor that." The connection ended. Owena stood there, phone in hand, rage building. But then Alara's voice cut through everything. "Owena?" She turned. Her mother stood there, despite supposedly being in federal protection. Behind her were federal marshals looking apologetic. "She insisted," one marshal said. "Threatened to walk if we didn't bring her." "Mom, it's not safe." "Nowhere is safe," Ilara said firmly. "But here, with you, with our community, this is where I belong." They embraced, mother and daughter, while around them the chaos slowly transformed into order. Statements were taken. Evidence was collected. The biological weapons were carefully extracted and destroyed. But the real victory was smaller, quieter. It was Chloe hugging Owena and whispering, "Thank you." It was O'Brien's salute, still sharp despite his years. It was Thompson's nod of respect. It was a town that had stood up when it mattered. 3 days later, the diner was open again. The bullet holes had been patched, the blood cleaned away. But the atmosphere was different. There was pride now, shared purpose. Owena served coffee like nothing had changed, but everything had. People knew who she was now. Ghost 7 was no longer secret. The warrior and the waitress were the same person. "Order up," Jake called from the kitchen. The owner had returned, his mysterious absence during the corruption investigation explained by his own undercover role as a federal informant. Owena delivered eggs and bacon to table 4, refilled coffee at table 6. Normal things. Human things. Her phone buzzed. Colonel Harrison again. "The task force offers stands, Ghost 7. She looked around the diner. At her mother sitting in a booth, reading the paper that had her daughter's face on the front page. At the townspeople who'd risked everything for her. At the life she'd built here, half real, half fiction, but wholly hers. "I'll do it," she said, "but on my terms. Which are? I stay here. This is my home base. When you need me, you activate me. But between missions, I'm Owena Wilson, a small-town waitress. That's irregular. So is a waitress taking down an international arms dealer." There was a pause. Then, "Accepted. Welcome to Task Force Phantom, Ghost 7. She ended the call and went back to serving coffee. Through the window, she could see Shadow playing with local kids in the park across the street. The dog who had been trained to kill was learning to be just a dog again. Maybe that was the real victory. Not the arrests or the prevented attacks, but the ability to be both, warrior and waitress, ghost and human. The bell above the door chimed. A stranger entered, but his bearing was familiar, military, special operations probably. He sat at the counter, ordered black coffee. "You Owena Wilson?" he asked. "Depends who's asking." He slid a photograph across the counter, a young woman in military uniform. "My daughter. She's missing in Syria. The government says she's dead, but I know better." "I'm just a waitress." "No," he said firmly. "You're Ghost 7. And I need your help." Owena looked at the photograph. The young woman's eyes were familiar. The determination, the strength. She'd seen it in the mirror every morning in Kandahar. "I can't make promises," she said. "I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking for hope. Hope. Such a simple word for such a complex thing. Leave your contact information," she said finally. "Someone will be in touch." He left a card and departed. Owena tucked it into her apron. Another mission, another chance to make a difference. "You're going to help him," Ilara said. It wasn't a question. "Probably. Even though it's dangerous?" "Especially because it's dangerous. Someone has to do the hard things, Mom. Might as well be someone trained for it." The afternoon crowd was arriving. Farmers, truckers, locals who had made the diner their second home. They greeted Owena with nods and smiles, no longer seeing her as an outsider, but as one of them, their protector, their neighbor, their friend. Thompson came in with a crew from his construction company. They were rebuilding what Cade had destroyed, starting with the properties he'd damaged in his intimidation campaign. "Coffee all around," Thompson ordered, then quieter to Owena. "Cade's talking. Full cooperation with the feds. He's looking at 20 years old, but with good behavior." "He made his choice," Owena said. "Now he lives with consequences." "What about forgiveness?" "Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's not an excuse. It's just letting go of the anger so it doesn't poison you." "Have you forgiven him?" She thought about it while pouring coffee. "I'm working on it." The afternoon stretched into evening. The diner filled and emptied and filled again. Normal rhythms of small-town life, but underpinned now with something deeper. They'd faced evil together and won. That changed things, bonded them. As closing time approached, Owena found herself alone in the diner, except for her mother. They worked together in comfortable silence, cleaning, preparing for tomorrow. "Your father would be proud," Ilara said suddenly. "You think?" "I know. He always said the hardest battles were the ones nobody saw. The daily choice to do right when wrong was easier. I'm not done fighting, Mom. This task force, these missions, it's not going to be safe. Safety is an illusion, sweetheart. Your father taught me that. The only real security is on purpose, in knowing you're doing what you're meant to do. And you think this is what I'm meant to do? I think you're meant to protect people who can't protect themselves. Whether that's serving coffee or serving justice, it's all the same calling." The bell chimed one last time. Colonel Harrison entered, not in uniform but in civilian clothes. He looked older, tired. "Mrs. Wilson, Ghost 7. "Colonel," Owena acknowledged. "Coffee?" "Please," she poured while he gathered his thoughts. Volkov's intelligence was partially correct, he said finally. About Kandahar, there were complications. My team died from complications? Your team died because bad intelligence met worse timing, but someone did make the choice to send you anyway. That someone has been identified and dealt with. Who? Does it matter? They're gone. It won't bring your team back. It matters to me. Harrison pulled out a file, slid it across the counter. Inside was a single page, mostly redacted, but one name was visible, General Patricia Hayes. She was selling operational intelligence. Your mission was supposed to fail, but with plausible deniability. She didn't expect you to survive. The revelation sat like lead in Owena's stomach, betrayed by their own, sent to die for money. She's dead now, Harrison continued, killed herself rather than face trial. Justice? A kind of it. They sat in silence, 3 people bound by loss and duty. The task force, Harrison said eventually. It's not just about missions. It's about preventing another Kandahar, about cleaning our own house while protecting the homeland. Internal affairs with extreme prejudice, if necessary, but mostly it's about being the sword in the darkness, the shield no one sees. Poetic? Necessary. The world is getting more complex. Traditional military responses don't always work. We need operators who can be anyone, anywhere. Waitresses, contractors, teachers, hidden in plain sight until needed. Ghosts. Exactly. He finished his coffee, left money on the counter. Your first mission briefing will come tomorrow. Nothing immediate, but we need you ready. After he left, Owena and Ilara locked up the diner and walked to the lake house. The damage from the investigation had been repaired. It looked exactly as it had before, but felt different. Safer, maybe, or just more honest. Shadow was waiting on the porch, tail wagging. Inside, Owena found packages, care packages from around the country, people who had seen the news, heard the story. Letters of thanks, of support, patches from military units, challenge coins from law enforcement agencies. One package stood out. No return address, but she recognized the handwriting. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single item, a worn seal trident. Not hers. She still had hers. This one was older, more battered. A note was attached. Your father wanted you to have this when you were ready. You're ready. Master Chief Nathan Cross, retired. Her father's trident, the one he'd worn in operations she'd never known about. She held it, feeling its weight, its history. He was Ghost 0, Ilara said quietly, the first, the prototype for what you became. You knew? I suspected, confirmed when Colonel Harrison visited. Your father started something. You're continuing it. The weight of legacy settled on her shoulders. Not just a warrior, but part of a tradition. A line of protectors stretching back through her father and forward through whatever came next. Her phone buzzed, the mission briefing Harrison had promised. She opened it, read quickly. Human trafficking rings operating through truck stops across 3 states. Local law enforcement was compromised. They needed someone who could infiltrate without suspicion. A waitress, perhaps. One who'd just publicly exposed corruption and might believably be looking for work elsewhere. When do you leave? Ilara asked, reading her expression. 3 days. I'll manage the diner. Mom, I'll have help. The whole town will help. This is what we do now. We support our own. Owena looked at the mission briefing again. 17 victims identified, more suspected. Children, some of them. I have to go, she said. I know. 3 days later, Owena Wilson left Montana in an old pickup truck, Shadow beside her, heading for a truck stop in Wyoming. To anyone watching, she looked like a woman starting over, running from fame she didn't want. In reality, she was Ghost 7, running toward danger because someone had to, because she could, because that's what ghosts did. They moved through the world unseen until the moment they were needed. The truck stop loomed ahead, bright lights in the darkness. Somewhere inside, predators were hunting. They didn't know that the greatest predator of all had just pulled into the parking lot. Ghost 7 was hunting too. The mission continued. The story continued. The waitress had become a warrior. The warrior had remained a waitress. And in that duality, in that balance between ordinary and extraordinary, lay the true strength of those who serve in shadows. Owena Wilson parked the truck, checked her reflection in the mirror. Tired waitress looking for work. Perfect. Ready, Shadow? The dog's tail wagged once. Ready. They walked toward the truck stop's glowing entrance. Toward danger. Toward duty. Toward the next chapter, in a story that had begun in a small Montana diner and would end only when there were no more innocents to protect. Behind them, the sun set over the mountains. Ahead, the night was full of possibilities, most of them dark. But darkness had never scared Ghost 7. She was born in it, trained in it, forged in it, and now she hunted in it. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss. The truck stop was busy, crowded with travelers and truckers. Perfect cover for predators, perfect hunting ground for a ghost. Owena Wilson smiled the tired smile of a waitress at the end of a long shift. Ghost 7's eyes cataloged exits, counted threats, identified targets. Both were ready. The hunt began again. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Owena approached the counter. A tired-looking manager glanced up from his clipboard, taking in her appearance with the practiced indifference of someone who had seen too many drifters. "Help you?" he asked. "Looking for work," Owena replied, letting exhaustion color her voice. "Have experience? References if you need them." The manager's eyes sharpened slightly. The news from Montana had traveled even here. He recognized her, but said nothing about it. "Can you start tonight? Just lost a girl. No notice, just didn't show up." Didn't show up, or couldn't show up. Owena filed that away. "Sure, where do I change?" He pointed toward the back. "Lockers are there, uniforms in number 12. Shift ends at 6 a.m. The locker room was empty, but recently used. A purse sat abandoned in an open locker. The missing girl's, probably. Inside, Owena found a photograph. Young woman, maybe 19, was smiling beside an older man who wasn't smiling at all. His hand on her shoulder looked less protective than possessive. "You the new girl?" A voice from the doorway. Owena turned. Another waitress, older, with eyes that had seen too much. "Yeah, Owena." "Stella, word of advice? Don't ask questions. Don't make friends with the drivers. Just serve coffee and keep your head down." "That bad?" Stella's laugh was bitter. "Honey, you have no idea." But Owena did have an idea. The way Stella's hands shook slightly. The bruise is barely hidden by makeup. The way she flinched when male voices got too loud. This wasn't just trafficking. This was a system, integrated into the truck stop's operations. The manager knew. Some of the staff knew. They were all complicit, or victims, or both. Shadow waited in the truck, her backup if things went wrong. But first, she needed intelligence. Names, routes, connections. The night shift started. Owena served coffee, took orders, and watched. Table 6 had 3 men who never ordered food. Just coffee, but stayed for hours. Their eyes tracked every young woman who entered. Hunters waiting for prey. At 2 a.m., a new truck pulled in. Custom rig, expensive. The driver who entered made everyone tense. Even the hunters at table 6 looked away. "Coffee, black," he ordered when Owena approached. She poured, noting the tattoo on his wrist. Cyrillic letters, Russian connections then. Volkov's network had been larger than they'd known. "You're new," he observed. "Started tonight." "The other girl, Sarah, is she around?" The manager said she didn't show up. His smile was cold. "That's unfortunate. She had obligations." Owena kept her expression neutral, but inside, Ghost 7 was mapping the quickest route to this man's throat. Sarah hadn't run. She'd been taken, moved up the chain from victim to commodity. The hunt had begun, but the prey was bigger than expected. This wasn't just one trafficking ring. This was a pipeline, and Ghost 7 had just found its entrance. The coffee pot in her hand had never felt more like a weapon.